Thank you. Good evening. This is our Finance Committee meeting along with our subcommittee from the Citizens Advisory Council. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. This meeting is open to the public but with limited first come, first served seating due to COVID-19. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube Sumter School District Board meetings. Now, would you join with me for a time of meditative thought? Thank you. Now let's say our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you who are in attendance tonight. We have of our committee, I'm the chairwoman, Cheryl Ray, and then we have Brian Alston in attendance, Johnny Hilton, and Sean Reagan. Our subcommittee members, we have Artie Baker and Leslie Bruner in person, and Shari Miller is attending virtually. Is that right? Okay. And then we have our ex officio members, Dr. Penelope Martin Knox, our superintendent, and our CFO, Jennifer Miller, and she is attending virtually. And then we have our administrative manager, Amy Hanson. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Again, I'd like to thank our subcommittee members for being in attendance tonight. This is our first time to meet face to face, and please feel open to ask any questions as we're presenting some things. A lot of what we're going to do tonight will be review from our last board meeting with the financial report, and then we usually have some things that we delve a little deeper into. Okay. First thing on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair, woman, I'd like to amend the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to include an executive session for committee members at the end of this evening's meeting for the discussion of receipt of legal advice for the legal advice related to pending, threatening, or potential claims, discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual agreements, and discussion of negotiations incident to proposed property contractual matters.
All right, we have a motion for an executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor to add an executive session for committee members at the end of this evening's meeting for the discussion of receipt of legal advice where the legal advice relates to pending, threatened, or potential claims, discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements, and discussion of negotiations incident to proposed property contractual matters. All committee members in favor, please vote by a show of hands. Okay, let's see all the hands?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this motion is approved. Next on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. That's approval of the minutes which were given to you ahead of this meeting. With no objections, the minutes will stand approved. Okay, no objections then. Okay. All right, at this time we're down to the superintendent's report, and we're going to turn that over to her and to CFO Miller.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Chairwoman Ray, members of the Sumter School District Finance Committee and Subcommittee. At this time, we've moved to item 4.1, the Office of Finance, the General Fund Review, Revenue and expenditures through June 30th, 2021. And I'll yield at this time to the Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Jennifer Miller.
Yes, good evening, Chairwoman Cheryl Ray, Finance Committee members, and Superintendent Dr. Martin Knox. This evening, we have the June 30th, 2021 revenue and expenditures for the general fund as of September 23rd, 2021. The projected revenue was adjusted by $35,000. Some of the larger adjustments were the local tax revenue code 3840 manufacturing and the manufacturing reimbursement were decreased by $332,000 as a result of posting the year-end tax receivable and deferred revenue for our annual financial statements. The revenue code, sorry, my notes just flashed on me. The revenue code for the tuition LEA was increased by $65,000. And then legal settlements were increased by $103,000 based on the settlement of the case and the respective insurance proceeds. The revenue code 3825 new school credit was increased by $203,000 as a result of revised information received from the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. This takes the total projected revenue to $129,171,894. Moving on to page 2, we have increased expenditures by $2.5 million. We have increased other financing sources by $592,000, and we have decreased transfers by $732,000. Starting with the transfers, we were able to reduce the amount transferred to the food service fund as a result of additional COVID-19 funding received by the food service fund to offset the loss that was sustained in that fund during fiscal year 21. Then the other financing sources increased as a result of the indirect costs we were able to record resulting from grant funding and grant activity as of June 30th, 2021. Moving on to expenditures, we have evaluated our expenditures and solidified the change in the fund balance for the fiscal year. The non-payroll expenditures came in under budget by approximately $2 million. The majority of these budgets are managed by the departments and school levels. The interest and principal line items are managed by the Office of Finance and were adjusted with year-end audit entries. The largest fluctuations were in the following expenditure object codes. 410, supplies, with a decrease of approximately $492,000. 620, interest, a decrease of approximately $202,000. 399, miscellaneous purchase services, a decrease of $152,000. 313, pupil services, a decrease of approximately $150,000. 470, energy, a decrease of $130,000. 445, tech and software supplies, a decrease of $125,000. 323, repairs and maintenance, a decrease of $117,000. 660, pupil activity, a decrease of $108,000. 319, other professional and legal services, a decrease of $80,000. 345, technology services, a decrease of $70,000. And then lastly, the 610, redemption of principal, a decrease of $69,000. While we do anticipate additional adjustments relating to the financial audit for accruals as we continue to close out the year, we believe the amounts will not be material to the financial statements. Also, as mentioned in last week's board meeting, there is a one-time retention stipend in the amount of $2,000 for full-time employees and $1,000 for part-time employees who were working for us during fiscal year 2021 and remained with us during fiscal year 2022. The dollar figure for that retention stipend totals approximately $4.6 million. As stated previously, as non-payroll expenditures came in under budget by $2.5 million, we were able to use that to help offset the cost of the retention stipend, and along with the other adjustments for other financing sources and the decrease in the transfer to the food service fund to manage that stipend amount. The changes discussed will result in an overall change in the fund balance of $7,102,049, which will bring the projected fund balance as of June 30th, 2021 to $32,476,427. This fund balance is equivalent to 26% of our operating budget, which is just over 3 months of operating expenditures. This allows the district to remain in good financial position to be able to weather financial uncertainties, potentially increase our bond ratings, which will allow for competitive interest rates on our annual debt issuance, all while ensuring our children's needs are being met and investing in our employees. At this time, are there any questions?
Any questions? I'd like to add, before we go any further, that Dr. Ora Span is with us by way of telephone, so she is here. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right, no questions? Yeah.
And at this time, Ms. Miller, would you proceed to 4.2, Office of Finance, General Fund Revenue and Expenditures through August the 31st, 2021?
Yes, ma'am. Next, we'll discuss the August 31st, 2021 General Fund Revenue and Expenditures. I've adjusted the total projected revenue by a decrease of $44,000. The majority of this relates to the revenue code we discussed last month, which was 3992 State Forestry Commission. Moving down to expenditures, we have not adjusted the expenditures at this time. We will continue to review payroll expenditures and update projections as figures become more solid. As we continue to hire employees, salaries and benefits will continue to fluctuate significantly. Please keep in mind that the budget was created using a vacancy allowance of $1.5 million. That means those funds were removed from the budget. Additionally, the budget removed $2.4 million of salaries from the general fund over to the Esser 2 budget. That's a total of $3.9 million not included in the general fund that we normally do have. Additionally, with the teacher vacancies we are experiencing, we have outsourced positions which do cost the district more than the budgeted salaries and benefits.
Question.
Okay.
The 1.5 vacancy allowance, or whatever you call it, how many positions was that, roughly how many positions did that account for? You
You
understand?
broke up a little, but I think you were asking how many positions for the vacancy allowance?
Yeah, the vacancy allowance was 1.5 million, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So how many positions did that cover?
That was 10 teachers and 25 non-teaching positions.
10 teachers and 25 non-teaching.
Yes, sir.
So how many vacancies do we have at the moment?
Dr. Martinoff, did you want to take that? I saw you reach for the microphone.
Sure. So at this time, well, it fluctuates daily, Dr. Hilton, good
Yeah.
question. The last time I checked, there were 33.5 teaching
Teachers.
vacancies, yes, sir. If there are any other vacancy numbers, I would have to check, and I can get that for you in a moment.
That's okay, and any idea about the non-certified vacancies?
I can get that number for you, but
That's okay,
you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
So we allowed for 10 and we're at 33 now, is that what you said?
And in cumulative, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
now,
you.
what was the number that Dr. Kumas gave us last time, that the 78? So we've reduced it in this month?
So those were, the 33 were just teaching, but that number was
Was in
encompassing
total.
paraprofessionals
Okay.
and other positions as well.
The 78 was total.
Yes, sir.
vacancies.
So now we're to a total of 58.
Something like that. I can get the specific numbers for you.
Ms. Miller, would you address the $2.4 million that was moved because of the Esser Funds? We might need a little more explanation for our newer members, and then also talk about the outsourcing.
Yes, ma'am. The 2.4 million of salaries that we moved out of the general fund to the Esser funds were 33 teaching positions that to help balance our budget, we were able to shift those positions over to the Esser funds and pay for those out of Esser funds.
Y'all have any questions about Esser funds? Do you understand?
And then for
You know
the
what-
outsourcing, we budget a
Ms. Miller,
every-
can you go back and discuss the Esser funds, what that is for us?
Yes, ma'am. The Esser funds are the COVID-19 funding that the district has received from the federal government. We are on 3 phases of that. We started with CARES, Esser 1, then we had Esser 2, and then lastly, we are working on the Esser 3 budget as well. So there were 3 different forms of stimulus money that we received as a result of the pandemic, and expenditures are approved by the State Department. They have to fall within specific, I think there's 15 categories now with Esser 3, and they have to be approved by the State Department, and they all have to directly relate to COVID. And you have to ask the question, if we did not experience COVID, would we need this expenditure item? If the answer is no, then we would not be allowed to use Esser funding.
So it strictly limits what it can be used for? Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Okay.
Question. There's 33 teaching positions that were moved over to Esser funds. Give me some examples of what kind of positions those were.
I heard the first part, the 33 positions moved to Esser funds,
Yeah, what were those? I mean,
teacher positions.
Just random teacher positions, or certain subjects, or certain grade levels, or we don't know?
They were just 33 random positions. It is not designated to, it's not tied exactly to one teacher. It's just that we are allowed to have 33 of those paid out of the Esser funding.
Where did the 33 number come from?
That was our estimate based on the decrease in enrollment, the number of teaching positions that possibly could have been reduced based on the lower enrollment figures as the 135th day of last year. But as we all know, that enrollment figure has changed this year. That was during the pandemic when students were virtual.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, what was the total in all 3 phases that y'all got? I thought, wasn't it 5.4 the first, something like that?
The first one was approximately 5.6 million. I'm gonna pull it up right now. The second one was approximately 23 million. And I'm gonna pull the spreadsheet up right now to give you the exact amounts. All right, the total between the 3 was $82,101,525.
And you were able to use some of that for teachers, for teaching positions? Is that what you were saying? 33?
Yes, sir.
33 teacher positions were moved to the COVID money that y'all received, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the student population right now? Anybody?
15,000,
You at 15?
somewhere around there.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, sorry.
With the teaching positions that were moved to Esser Fund, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
With the teaching positions that were moved to Esser funding, that is only temporarily that those positions were moved to Esser funding, because after Esser Fund, the grant period runs out. Those positions will have to be calculated back into our general fund, is that correct?
That is correct, or we would have to not renew contracts with 33 teachers.
And when is that? When is it 2028? Is that when the funds drop?
No, 24
That was
is the
2024.
last, that is when the last one expires. One expires in 22, one expires in 23, and one expires in 24.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. All right, anything else on that? Okay. Mark Knox.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. And finally, 4.3, the Office of Finance Capital Projects Update as of August 31st, 2021. And Ms. Miller, back over to you.
Yes, ma'am. You have funds 519 through 526 that are in front of you, and please note that we did just close on Fund 527 the second to last week in September, so next month you will see a Fund 527 as well. But right now, if you have any questions on capital projects, I'll take those.
Okay, I have a few questions. In Fund 519, I see that all that amount is encumbered. When will that be closed out?
It'll depend on the specific projects and when those expenditures actually are finalized. The one is roof repairs. I know we're continuing to do roof repairs all the time, so we try to spend the oldest money first, so that one should be closing out soon. And then the fire alarm, I would have to ask Mr. Myers about that one as far as when that one will be closed out.
Okay.
I'm actually trying to look in the system right now to see if the status has changed since I ran these reports.
Question. Has the awning been finished at REA?
Yes, sir.
Completely, totally?
So the awning is up, now we're getting ready to do the concrete work under the awning, but the awning was up, I believe, Thursday.
So the awning is up as of Thursday, but the concrete work's not finished
Will be
yet?
correct,
Hadn't started yet, right?
correct.
Okay.
And I did just pull the most recent data, and the fire alarm project has been completed, and those funds were remaining, and so they were just moved over to the roof repairs category. And of the 7,800, I know 1,400 of that, I just signed something on that today, so I know they're in the process of trying to spend those funds.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Ms. Miller, with Fund 520, we have some funds that's in the remaining budget for that. And it says that we have to spend it by the spring of 2021. Are we being penalized for not spending that money right now, or?
It'll be a one-time penalty. It's actually basically a tax that has to be paid on those funds, and so we have passed that deadline. So when they do the arbitrage rebate calculation, they'll calculate that off of the remaining amount.
Do you have an estimate of how much that could be?
I don't have an estimate of that.
Thank you.
If I may.
Okay.
But keep in mind that the penalty is less than the interest we earn on it.
Right.
So we will lose a little, but we're still way in the black on that, not in the red.
Okay, Ms. Miller, on 522, the arts and athletics, I know that we've discussed this before, and you probably have told us, but how are those requested and dispersed? There's still a good bit remaining in that budget.
Those are handled by the respective departments, and the arts, I know there was a budget that was approved by the board, so it would have to be expenditures that fall within what was approved. And then the athletics, I don't know the split of what's remaining between the two, but I can get that information for you.
So teachers can request what they want. I'm talking about the arts now, and they were given the guidelines to request the money?
That was a budget that was approved, so that was handled, I believe, at the district level. We're coming up with a budget that was approved by the board, so it would not be individual teachers submitting a request.
Okay, so it's the school.
And to answer your question, yes, they were given an allocation, and then, of course, they provided a wish list. And I know some of these items that were requested were, they were in back order, but I can make sure this is updated because the person who was handling it has since retired, and so there's a transition or changing of the guard, if you will. But I can definitely follow up with you with this to make sure that even if there were new teachers, they know that this money is still available.
So that's why that's showing as money still there?
Yes, ma'am.
That's been, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because, that's always been
Absolutely.
a problem that they, were saying they didn't have the money, so.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a problem knowing that money's there.
Okay, and then, this is in a couple of these, the 524, could you update us on the trailer removal, and I think demolition's in another category, another fund?
I'm looking to see what Mr. Myers had mentioned last week about those, I believe.
I can go ahead and do it. I can
Got
do
it?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
So, we've been working diligently to have those items removed from the property. We've hit a couple of glitches. One, we auctioned the portables, if you will. We auctioned them, and a few of them were auctioned but never retrieved. And then we were informed that before we could auction them, that they needed to be tested for asbestos, and so there was another step that was supposed to take place. And so we've since done that. We've gone back to those individuals who auctioned the items, and they were given a notification that they needed to retrieve them by a particular date, and if not, they would be demolished. So we have been in the process of doing an RFP for the demolition, and so I know we're moving in that direction to have those items, if they're not retrieved, to be demolished. There are a few of them as well that cannot be sold because they're in such bad condition they have to be demolished. So we are working to secure a company to take care of those for us.
Okay. I also had a question on the Sumter Academy, that's in 525. What is showing there now? Because I know we had a different budget and we had gone a little bit over that. What is that in there, the
My notes here say that they're awaiting the closeout documents and the final invoice. So that would just be probably the retainage on the project. Typically with construction work, there's a retainage that's held back until the very completion of a project.
Okay, so do we have a figure on how much over the initial budget that we went?
Let me try to open that Excel file. I should have the beginning budget
You're
amount.
talking about the whole project, is that what you're asking about?
Mhm.
And Ms. Miller, it's been a while, but it is the transference and the collective leftovers from the same function to complete the project, because we went under bid for that. I just don't know the exact dollar figure.
Okay, it looks like we originally had a $300,000 budget, and then we were able to move funding that was remaining from other projects. Is that what you were just saying, Dr. Martin Knox? Of $143,000, taking the total to $443,053. We ended the prior year with a balance of $27,659 remaining in the budget, and that's what carried over to the current year. And will end, it looks like, based on what's encumbered so far, if that invoice comes in with what the encumbered amount is, it will have $76 remaining. So $443,000.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
you're telling me we went $140,000 over budget?
The budget had to be revised once the scope of the work was finalized, is what I believe occurred.
That's correct.
Could we, at some point, get an explanation of the scope of the work that caused us to go that much over budget? Not tonight, but sometime in the future. I'd be curious to know.
Sure, I know that when the work began, there were some matters that we encountered that weren't previously identified from the surface level when we worked with the architect. There were some items that we had to update and bring up to code, but I can give you the specifics to those items as well.
Thank you. And if I may, Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
going back to this trailer thing, I don't understand the problem, because last time I was out at a couple of the schools, they were telling me that these trailers were unusable. And they've been sitting there since forever.
That's right.
And no disrespect, but you used the word diligently.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if the trailer is no good, then I don't get it why we can't get it out of the way, because it's in the way out there, and it's a hazard, right?
It is, from my perspective, yeah.
Thank you.
And so, to the trailers, to your point, the final bids for the demolition were due today. When everyone said there's an RFP that's out there,
Okay.
they were due today with the demolition.
So it's coming soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Also in 525, could we have an update on the serving line? I know we had a discussion about that.
Yes, ma'am. So we went back and we looked at the date of the purchase of the serving line, and there were repairs that were done to the serving line, that we had to continue to do. I can give you the specific date. The serving line it needs to be replaced, and it will be replaced. And I know the conversation we had is that it was one of the newer ones. And so it was one of the newer ones, but it was purchased and installed in, here we go. And that was the serving line, just for everyone's awareness, it was the serving line from High Hills. And so, it was the hot section of the serving, is operating, but it's the cold section that's not working. And what the staff was doing was using ice steam table pans to keep the food at the 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Cold foods served higher than 41 degrees Fahrenheit is a DHEC and an HACCP violation. So the maintenance team connected the hot section from the old serving line and the cold section from another serving line to make one complete serving line. And so that unit was actually purchased in 1989. And then it was replaced and repaired in 1998. So it was time to buy a new unit. So it was the whole unit. I know the question was it part of the unit or part? It was the whole unit.
So has that been done now?
The purchase order, yes, they are in the process of purchasing a
Okay.
replacement unit.
All right, thank you. And I had one more question in Fund 526. I think it was that I saw, maybe it wasn't this one, because I'm seeing that's where it's got some of that demolition in there. And I don't see it now, but there was some money put aside for some fencing. I didn't look up which school, but I have been told that there's a big problem with the fence at Oakland in the back that's connected to the residential neighborhood there. Has that been repaired, or is that?
I do not believe it's been repaired, but don't misquote me. I know that we've been looking at it because you are exactly right. It's Oakland and Rafting Creek are the two areas where the fences are of concern. I can't get in touch with staff because for some odd reason, my phone is not responding for text messages. I shouldn't have said that.
The whole world went down today.
Yeah, it was fencing repairs, that was in the 526. Okay. All right, any other questions?
No, I just thank Dr. Hilton for that information because I was trying to figure out why staff was ignoring me, but now I know.
Martin Zuckerberg got,
Yeah, it was Facebook and Instagram,
yeah,
wasn't
shut
it?
them all down.
I'm texting and nobody's answering, but I got
They
it.
had it on the news this morning, so he shut it all down.
Oh,
Okay, and, could we get an update on, we looked into, we had discussed one time some of the situations with the sports at Sumter High. Could you update us on that?
yes, ma'am. Actually, there was a walkthrough that was conducted a couple of weeks ago, where we visited with an external individual who focuses on those matters, and there's some things that we need to do in the immediate, and I will have an update for you with those items specifically in the very near future. But yes, we're continuing to move forward to look at those items. And I think one of them was something for softball in the back, so if they are going to catch the ball, the wall needs to have padding on it so they won't hit their heads. There's some items like that. Yes, ma'am.
And that was having to do with some of the athletic fields and making them, the male and female sports equitable, yeah.
All this is athletics at Sumter High, is that what the question was?
It's actually all
Title
three.
IX, is it Title IX issue?
Yes, sir. It's actually all three of our high schools, looking at all three of our high schools, because they were designed the same way and around the same time.
Okay. And I just have a question about, this is going to the Esser Funds again. The company that we're doing our virtual school through, is that how we're paying them with the Esser Funds?
To answer the question, yes, ma'am, we're using that. It's as a result of the coronavirus and the pandemic, and so we're able to utilize that funding for those types of supports for during school or learning loss is the language that's being used. So
And
yes.
are we using all of the slots?
So the last time I checked, I believe I have to get the updated number, but we had not filled all of the slots. And it changes on a day-to-day basis, depending on the needs of the students and the medical needs as well. But that number changes.
And you might want to explain exactly who can attend that virtual
Sure.
school.
So our Virtual Learning Academy was designed to meet the needs of our children who are identified as medically fragile, who could not come to school as a result of the pandemic, or who would, face detrimental outcomes for their health and well-being. So we designed a virtual learning academy with an external agency to make sure our students are able to continue to learn. Based on the information that was used as a guidance tool from the South Carolina Department of Education, and based on other guidance, we could not exceed 5% of our student population. So we had to design the school with less than 5% of our students in mind. Knowing that those numbers would change and fluctuate, we actually tried to keep it at about 4% with the admissions process. We actually changed the date for the application process and put it in place until up to Labor Day, so that parents could apply, provide the appropriate documentation to make sure we were supporting children. And so that number changes on a day-to-day basis because students are diagnosed with different ailments every day. And we're continuing to move forward with that process and that approach.
Yes.
How many slots do we have, 4% of 15,000?
Yes, sir.
How many is that? I can't do that in my head, can y'all?
Jennifer, what's that number? How many did we slated for?
How many? It's the count of.
You're muted.
We originally had slated for 700 students, but then based on the specific needs with special education teachers, it was revised to 520 students is what we have
So we still
budgeted.
have some space?
We do still have space. Yes, sir. And I couldn't get, although I said 5%, 4%, I knew we played with the numbers just a little bit, so.
Yeah.
Now, do we still have any students doing like a more traditional homebound that are temporarily out?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so this is ones who are staying out for the whole school
Permanently.
year?
Yes,
But
ma'am.
Is a traditional homebound student getting their instruction virtually using the agency, or are they getting their homebound virtually using some school district teacher, or neither one?
Both.
Okay.
We're using both, just to meet the varying needs of our students. And so we have some students who are being taught with teachers doing dual modality, just based on their needs. Many of our students have several needs that's in their IEP that could not be met through the Virtual Learning Academy. And so we had to go back through their IEPs and have meetings with the parents just to make sure we're meeting their services and in compliance. So that's why it's a combination of both. We have students who are going through Edmentum for non-core classes, but are also having a virtual approach with our teachers for their core classes, for the reading and the math, if that makes sense.
Did you have a question?
No. She was asking the question, but I was wondering.
All right. All right, now I have one more question. We had discussion about the problem that we've had in the past with the work orders. Are we caught up with that now, or what's our status?
So, Mr. Cato has been doing a good job. He hit the ground and he began to run with it, and he's been looking at the work orders to make sure that they're up to date and that they're in compliance. One of the things that we recognized in the work, once we were evaluating, our staff work very well with one another, and so what we also recognize is that sometimes they would be in work order, but if they got a phone call from the school and said, I have a problem, they would stop and go deal with the school problem. So what we've said to them is to make sure you stay in compliance with the work orders and not stop unless it's an absolute emergency. So we've asked principals and asked staff to go directly to our system of School Jude, as opposed to calling our mechanics and maintenance folks individually. Because what happens is they wanna serve and they'll stop during their work or the order in which the work orders were submitted to go deal with another matter. And we actually directed them to only comply with the work orders unless Mr. Cato gives them a different set of directives.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one where I'm a little bit confused. At the beginning, we were talking about, teachers, and you were cutting back on teachers or whatever. And did I hear you say that it's more expensive to hire out teachers to come in, or substitutes, I guess, I don't know the terminology, than it is to hire a teacher? Did you say that?
I think he's referring to the contractual,
Yeah.
yeah.
So is that basically what you're saying, that it's more expensive to have to bring teachers into the school, I mean, substitutes in?
Not a
It is.
substitute. A substitute is one thing.
What's outsourcing? When you outsource, you're outsourcing what?
Outsource is when, you ain't, let me stay
You're
out
doing a
of it.
good job.
I just want to understand.
So when you were in school and Miss Jones was absent,
Yeah,
when you were a teacher and you were absent, they got a sub come in and teach your class.
correct.
That's a substitute. Outsourcing means we can't find a teacher for that particular subject area. So we hire somebody from outside who is not.
A certified teacher,
No, they could be certified, but they're not.
but they're not certified in that field.
No,
No, they're certified.
they could be certified in that
They're not.
field, but they're not an employee of Sumter School District. It's,
She could probably explain it.
it's like you bring in a contract.
That would help.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
contract
I
teacher.
just do it with substitutes for other teachers, but so
Right,
you don't
this
do
is-
that.
this is- Yeah, we do,
Yeah,
but this
you-
is different, and tell him where they come from.
So very good, Dr. Hilton, thank you so much.
Thanks.
So, a substitute teacher, we still have substitute teachers,
Yeah.
and they receive their standard rate of pay. What happens is when we have those hard to fill, if you will, positions, and after all of our recruiting efforts, we can't find anyone, we actually contract with an external agency that focuses only on providing virtual instruction with live teachers. And so we outsource with a company that provides that service for us, so it is more expensive.
More expensive.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Thank you.
Another area is of nurses, right?
Yes, sir.
We can't find enough nurses. So sometimes we have to outsource nurses. We have to hire a nurse that actually works for company XYZ.
Yeah.
But they're coming and serving our students, but they don't work for us. They work for XYZ, and we're paying XYZ company, because we can't find enough nurses, you know. That's another example of outsourcing.
Yeah, I heard y'all talking about that, and I was just trying to figure out how it can be more expensive
And it's
Basically,
very,
it's an agency.
and it's very competitive at this time because everybody around the nation's looking for the same thing. And so we have companies that really focus in on
So
it.
what are y'all looking for mainly? I mean, what are the top?
So there's always a shortage in the area of special education, those who deliver special services in the area of mathematics, usually the math and the science areas. Those are usually what we call critical shortage areas in education. And so there are some other positions, again, given the pandemic, that we're continuing to fill vacancies. And once we can't fill them, we can't deny children education. And this is just an alternative to having a substitute in the classroom. These are certified, qualified individuals that are hired through an agency, almost like a temp agency, if you will, the services that you get. And so we have to do whatever we can to fill our classrooms with certified, qualified individuals to deliver instruction. And it's aligned to the state curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you, Ms. Miller, for your report, and thank you, Dr. Martin Knox, for your explanations. I think that concludes what's on our agenda tonight. I would like to thank Ms. Brunner and Mr. Baker for coming to our meeting tonight and being part of that Citizens Advisory Committee. We look forward to meeting with you again next week. I think that's October 14th.
Thank you, Sean.
That one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the virtual, and Dr. Ori Span and then Shari Miller. Thank y'all for being in attendance. All right, since we have amended our agenda, is there a motion for the committee consisting of committee members to enter into an executive session?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I move that we enter into executive session for the receipt of legal advice, whether legal advice relates to pending, threatening, or potential claims, discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements, and discussion of negotiations incident to proposed property contractual matters.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second that the committee members enter into executive session for the discussion of receipt of legal advice where the legal advice relates to pending, threatened, or potential claims, discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements, and discussions of negotiations incident to proposed property contractual matters. All committee members in favor, please vote by show of hands. Okay, all right, so we will now be going into executive
All right.
session.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Appreciate
Span.
it.
Thank you, Shari.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye, Dr. Span.
And can you call our
Bye.
All right, the committee is now back in open session. I again want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, and those who were in attendance virtually and those who were present. And hope to see the advisory committee members next Thursday in their meeting. And the finance committee will probably be meeting in about another month. All right, so no further business. This meeting is adjourned at 7:53.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Over and out.